Hello there and welcome to Black Jackal Gaming. We're going to take a look at the Space Marine detachment problem. So they currently have 7 standard detachments in Codex Space Marines, 2 supplement books from Blood Angels and Dark Angels. They have a supplement index in Space Wolves, the Christmas detachments for each individual one. As well, we've just seen the return of Death Watch. Is the faction bloated and is it difficult to balance? Let's take a look. So in Codex Space Marines, we get the 7 standard detachments. There's one for Ultramarines, Raven Guard, Iron Hands, Imperial Fists, Salamanders, and White Scars. And there's one for First Company veterans, so the likes of your Terminators and Blade Guard veterans. There's a lot of different playstyles across these lists, such as flexibility, using a full boss unit, rerolls dedicated to vehicles, additional strength on your attacks when you're closer to your opponent, -1 to hit when you're further away. So there's lots of different styles available with some nice stratagems and enhancements to go along with them. But the problem with this, there's not a lot of balance across them. Now some of them do have really nice little stratagems to go with them, but the detachment rule isn't quite as strong. So you've got the Ultramarines detachment being the Gladius Task Force. It's probably the most popular one because it's the most flexible and allows you to be active in all parts of the game. And then you got the Iron Hands, which is probably the second most popular because that gives you the rerolls to hit and wounds, which is very nice. And then Raven Guard, based on buffs and nerfs to certain units, they come in and out the game of being good and popular. But the rest are struggling slightly, especially First Company veterans, which is just, quite frankly, a terrible detachment. Now looking at the supplements, we've recently got the Blood Angel supplement, so that comes with your 3 detachments within, your Liberator Assault Group, Lost Brethren, and Angelic Host. As well as this, you get the Christmas detachment on top of it. The Dark Angels supplement also comes with 3, being Unforgiven Task Force, Inner Circle Task Force, Company of Hunters, and then you get the Grotmas supplement with Lion's Blade Task Force. Then we also have Space Wolves. They currently have their index, which is just Champions of Russ. And there'll be at least a further 2 detachments when they get the supplement later on in the year, hopefully. It'd be at least 2 because Blood Angels and Dark Angels all come with their 3 detachments, with Champions of Russ likely to have a small rework. They also got their Christmas detachment to use, which will be compatible with the new supplement. And then Death Watch, which had been pretty much removed from the game and most of the units taken away, and then the main units just put inside of Imperial Agents. They've now had their index returned, and it's been reworked a bit to make it a little bit more playable on the tabletop. And there's actually just 1 LVO, so looking quite strong at the moment. So like I said, we've got the Christmas detachments from December 2024. Every faction within the game got at least 1 detachment to give them a little boost and more variety in their play. And Space Marines got the 4, so they got 1 for the Codex Space Marines, 1 Blood Angels, 1 for Space Wolves, 1 for Dark Angels, and the return of the Death Watch Index, which does use Codex Space Marines units. This gives a total of 19 detachments that have access to Codex Space Marines units, giving you a lot of variety, but at the same time a lot of headaches because that's a lot of detachments with rules, stratagems, and enhancements to get your head around, and for your opponents to look at and get their head around as well. So looking at balance, how could it possible to balance units across all of these detachments? Because different units are going to be better into certain detachments. We have seen instances where some units just go to the moon in some detachments, but are pretty awful in other ones and often unusable whatsoever. So we have seen increases in points for certain units that have been good, like when we saw Gladius Task Force with its Fire Strike enhancement, given the sustained hits 1 and critically hitting on a 5 when you're in Devastator. When this was put onto a Biologist with, for example, Aggressors, they become incredibly powerful. So instead of taking a look at this across just this detachment, because they weren't really seeing much use in the other detachments, they then decided to give a point increase to Aggressors, a point increase to the Biologists, as well as 3 point increases to the Enhancement. Now this did fix the issue with the unit overall, but it also weakened 3 units because you got the 2 different types of Aggressors, as well as the Biologists in the other detachments where they weren't as strong. The Biologist was quite good throughout most of the detachments, but not as good as it was in this. But then it just made the Aggressors quite average across the board. And it won't come as any surprise that GW really struggles to balance Marines. They never want them to be too strong, especially because they're a popular faction and they come in most start sets and they're quite easy to pick up. And a lot of new players play them, so if you've got the best army in the game, why would you spend more money and go to different armies? So when they do have 1 or 2 units that start to do well, they do tend to really hit them hard, even if Space Marines are middling at the time. If they've got 1 or 2 units that's getting taken too often, they will be getting hit with a nerf, either a data sheet change or they'll have a points increase to go along with it. Then that raises the question of, when you come to balance, do you restrict supplements just to use maybe Gladius and they can't access the other detachments? This would then give all of the supplements the 4 standard detachments they have, so the Grotmus and the 3 within their supplement, as well as Gladius, so that's 5 detachments. So they couldn't really complain too strongly, considering some other army books have only got 3 or 4 detachments in them together. So they probably are leaning a little bit on the greedy side, feeling hard done by not having access to 12 detachments in total. Then the other thing is, do you give bonuses just for Codex Space Marine units? Now, we have seen an update recently in the last data slate where they give Codex Space Marine units. That is, if you've taken no other models from any of the supplement, when you are targeting your open moment target, you get +1 to wound as well, which is very nice. It's a nice buff, but it is only into 1 target per turn. So it can have its limitations at times. Now, Space Marines have actually done quite well recently. They are looking quite strong. But this might just be a case that we are still waiting a lot of codexes to come out to give more options and updated data sheets to some of the other armies. We don't want GW to make a knee-jerk reaction and start nerfing Space Marines. And if there is an issue, it needs to take a look at the detachment instead. Now, if it does come out that Codex Space Marines is quite strong and it's just leaning into 1 or 2 detachments, then bring them down a peg. And then look at some of the other detachments and bring them up a peg or 2. Like I've spoken about previously, the first company needs an entire rework. You just never see it in play, probably even casually, because there's no point running the detachment. It's just substantially weaker than just running the same units in Gladius. Hopefully they do take a look at the internal balance in Space Marines, because like a lot of factions, it is a little bit out of whack. There's certain units that we'll just never see play, and they have taken a look at this with Outriders and Reavers having changes to their abilities, which makes them a little bit more usable on the battlefield, especially Outriders. If you go with Blood Angels, because they really ramp up, and Reavers turning off OC is very nice. I'd prefer them to take a look at this change, lower a couple of the units that get taken too often, but take a long hard look at the units that aren't seeing much play, and instead of knocking off 5 or 10 points, look at the actual data sheet and make some substantial changes to how it operates. If you like the video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you want to see any further content. Take it easy, I'll see you next time.